Um, the timer stuff. How long are opening statements?
3.
3 minutes.
3, 3, 23, 3.
3, 3, 23, 3. Okay. Okay, who's on the affirmative position?
I'm on the pro-choice position.
Okay, you're starting then.
Okay.
You're recording it, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your 3 minutes starts whenever you say your first word.
All right, go ahead, Xejeh.
All right, I want to start off by saying pro-choice is not pro-abortion. It is about having a choice. Most abortions occur in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. Late abortions are virtually always performed for the most serious medical and health reasons, including saving a woman's life. I want to add that in Northern Ireland, they passed a near total law against abortions with no exceptions at all. And what happened after this law was passed, the people with resources found a way around the law. Anyone with money traveled across the sea to England or other countries and had abortions. The abortion law simply only affected the middle and lower class, and it really only affects low income people. And that's all I had for my opening.
Okay. So you can start.
All right, let me start by saying I'm a little sick, so I might come across weird or whatever. But I had a debate previously. It wasn't an official one, but a side debate where I attempted to discuss the epistemic foundations for morality. In other words, how do we know that something is moral or not? And to lay my cards out on the table, I'm a Christian. So what I discovered and what should have been obvious to anyone is that my epistemic source, my ability to say, how do I know that something is right or wrong? Well, that comes from Scripture, and that's not going to be something that non-Christians or particularly just non-theists in general would find to be especially effective. So with all that said, I investigated some of the secular arguments with regard to philosophy, such as those made concerning substance and property dualism. But I found when it comes down to it, and people are most persuaded by arguments where they have something to lose. In other words, if you're not a theist, it's likely you don't find pro-life arguments effective because you, as a non-religious person, only have things to lose should abortion be stripped from you. So I'm going to be attempting to make the case that abortion is immoral in a practical instance because it doesn't benefit all of you in the long run. So my opponent needs to be able to explain why it is that I didn't, no offense to him, I didn't actually hear an argument. I just heard kind of statistics. So we'll get into that, I'm sure, going forward. But why is it that if it's bodily autonomy or whatever is going on in his argument, why is that more important than the welfare and lives of millions of our senior citizens and countries across the world that will be at risk as a result of a declining population, which we are facing? That's my opening statement.
Okay, you guys have 20 minutes, and it starts on the first word.
So, just to be clear, Xejeh, I didn't really get from your opening statement what, I get your position as pro-choice, but what is your argument?
That it's a woman's choice, it's woman's rights. That's my argument. Okay, and you said that you're a Christian, so do you believe that life begins at conception?
Yes, but that's not a...
So yeah. You answered my question, but so would you agree that people should be arrested for using Plan Bs since life would begin at conception, and therefore you would be killing life by using a Plan B?
My understanding is that Plan B actually prevents the sperm from uniting with the egg, so it's just like a delayed form of contraception.
But you said life begins at conception. So the life would already be there. The life would already be conceived.
That's not my understanding of. I'd have to get a fact check on that. My understanding of Plan B is that it literally prevents the egg from being united with the sperm or something there. So there is no like the conception doesn't even begin.
What is conception to you?
Conception is when the egg and the sperm are united.
So sex. So right after sex is that would be considered conception? Or intercourse.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm not exactly sure what the time is between like ejaculation and like right then and there. I'm assuming your swimmers have to make their moves before they make it to the egg. I don't think they get shot directly into the egg like someone flying into the Death Star.
Okay. Because my understanding of conception was right after sex, like as it's going on. Okay. Well, what do you think?
I don't. I was just going to say I don't know the whole biological ramifications, but there's a reason why you have some women who do this thing you may have seen in like The Big Lebowski, where they lift their legs up so that the ejaculate goes like down into them. I mean, there'd be no reason for that if it was just boom, there you go, pregnant.
Okay, I wanted to ask you that because you did say you were Christian, so I just wanted to see your values there.
Yeah, and that's fine, but me being Christian has nothing to do with my argument about population decline.
Okay, that's fair to say. So when do you think the cluster of cells becomes a person?
The cluster of cells becomes a person. Yeah. So this is something that I tried doing the best I could to debate this point. I don't think I can. At least, is it possible for me to? Maybe. But as far as I could discern, I couldn't provide something that would demonstrate to you why a person is at a certain point in conception before like the second or first trimester or whatever else the case may be. But it's irrelevant to my point. I don't need to prove personhood here because I'm talking about a pragmatic result that's an effect of an abortion.
So your point is kind of declining population. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
So what do you think about cases of rape or molestation? Like, do you think they should be forced, since that would still affect declining population? They should be forced to have these children?
I'm being consistent. I mean, yeah, I think especially in terms of my faith, if it's not that I don't feel for people in those circumstances. I think rape and molestation, these sort of things, are abominable. But that doesn't mean that the life of the child needs to be disturbed for that reason. But again, this has nothing to do with my argument.
It does, because it still affects population. So it would affect your argument.
So you're right, but I think if we're speaking like in a utilitarian sense, the vast majority of abortions are not from rape and incest. They're going to be from what do you call it? Elective surgery, I guess is a term you could use.
But your argument is about population decline, and it wouldn't just be the vast majority; it would be all, because all of it's still affecting population decline.
Well, so, you could say the same for things like contraception and that sort of thing, but you have to look statistically. If we're talking about what is the benefit of contraception versus abortion and these sort of things, I think these have a lot to play with effects on our economy. They have effects on the welfare of our citizens. So I'm less concerned about these fringe scenarios where someone's being raped, and that may or may not be debated. Because, yeah, you're right, it does have an effect on the population, but that will be negligible compared to the ramifications of elective abortions, where the vast majority of abortions are women saying, yeah, I just don't want to have a kid. It's not for rape or incest or something like that. Now, I'm not going to speculate on reasons. It could be a matter of convenience. It could be I'm not ready for a kid. I don't know what the reason is, but those are the majority of abortions, statistically speaking.
So in the lesser majority, in the minority of abortions, you would say it would be okay, since it's just like an exception.
Personally, no. To my point, I don't think it's relevant. I don't have a problem acquiescing for the purposes of this debate to say, sure, in those fringe scenarios, it's the effects are negligible. And I can give you statistics on. Well, I'll just tell you that like there's 36 to 53 million induced abortions, and that's internationally, and a third of those in the U.S. would have resulted in children. That's millions and millions of kids that would have come out of those circumstances.
Okay. So would you say that the fetus has rights?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get away from your point, but I'm questioning what the relevance is to my point, because what I have to say is, if we talk about your perspective, which is that being pro-choice, the autonomy of a woman is the most important thing here. My question to you is, how are you able to demonstrate that that's more important than the welfare of millions and millions of people that are affected by a declining population?
Okay, but a rising population would still negatively affect people.
Well, of course, but not as much as the declining population, where we're facing some very real crises that will affect people in this very chat room.
Like what?
Well, the main thing is that we are in most countries. Maybe it's not fair to say most, but certainly in first world countries, we have an increasingly aging population and a declining fertility rate. This is the case in places like China, the United States. Again, countries that we would consider industrialized. And you have increasing population of senior citizens where people won't be able to take care of them because they just won't exist. This is a very real threat that people are worried about.
You said China is worried about their population declining?
In terms of how it relates to taking care of their senior citizens, yes. Especially, I mean, I'm not even going to lie. Can I speak specifically of places like China? No, because I'm not Chinese. But if we speak in the United States sense, then yes, that certainly is a very real threat.
No,
we even see it today.
Because I brought it up because, like, you are aware of like their policy with children. Are you somewhat aware with it, familiar with it?
Yeah, the killing of well, certainly with I don't remember when the law ended. I don't think it's the case now, but the I don't remember the name of it, where the daughter was not a good thing. You wanted to have boys. I don't remember what it's called. I don't want to Google anything right now. But yeah, no, I'm familiar with the effects of that. Girls were sometimes slaughtered, and or one child only policy or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. I haven't looked into that for a while, but
so I'm kind of like, my point is like, bringing that up is, if declining population is such a has dramatic effects, why would China want to implement something like this? And China has, I think, one of the biggest populations in the world, if not the biggest. I think so.
Yeah, I think it was the middle of the 2010s that declined. I just ended up Googling it real quick. The one-child policy between 1980 and 2015. I mean, that I'm sure the statistics on a declining population have only just been sort of emphasized. I think I only started hearing about this a few years ago, especially around COVID, because during COVID especially, we saw a rampant increase in people in hospitals that weren't able to be taken care of because we just, I mean, you can see today we have an employee crisis. Hiring is still a big problem because they're just people that aren't there to work. A lot of people, especially boomers, will blame that on people who don't want to work, but I think that's sort of missing the point. I don't think it's they don't want to work. I think there's just people not to work.
Okay, that kind of would just disprove your point.
What's that?
Saying like the generations, upcoming generations, just like don't want to work. So that's a reason why older folk are not really being taken care of.
No, I don't agree with that. I'm saying I don't think it's that they don't want to work. I think it's that they're not there to work to prove my point.
They're not there to work. Where are they?
Yeah. Well, they weren't born. That's my point. Is that the declining population is already affecting us. If we go back to the one-child policy in China, the reason I think they ended that was because they realized that the declining population in China was actually a really bad thing. For years and years and years, I'm sure you remember. You ever seen that movie Soylent Green? It was Soylent Green in the movie took place in 2022, and I think it was from the 70s or something. And they thought we were going to live in this dystopic world where there were food shortages and just billions and billions of people. But it's actually quite the opposite. The declining population is actually a bad thing in our case.
I don't think the reason that there's a job shortage is because of declining population. You do know that like unemployment is at like all-time high right now, right?
You're right, but if you look into the statistics, like I just found an article, it says the decline in people of working age will partially stem from an aging population, the number of deaths exceeding births, and reduced immigration. And I don't think you'll find this in many articles today, but I imagine abortion would have some sort of inkling factor on that.
And population decreasing is kind of just a first world problem. Like around the world, like they're overpopulated in many countries because they essentially need more children to do things like be on the farm and other labor. In countries like the US where we're at, like we essentially don't really need to produce that many children. That's why there's not. And that's why in low income areas you see a lot more children because they essentially need those children.
You're right, but these third world countries, if we want to use that term, are actually starting to become a problem, or they're starting to experience a problem when it comes to declining population. So you're right, a country like India, like even India, for example, their population is growing. You're right, but they're seeing a marked decline in the same way that the U.S. and China would have seen a decade or so ago, and now it's starting to concern them because that catches up. Of population growth. All the statistics are leaning towards a population that will eventually start declining in India. There's a name for this in statistics. I don't remember what it is, but it's basically this focal point where the planet will reach like the height of its population, and then it will rapidly start declining. I can't remember what that's called.
So let's get back to your point. Your point is basically that since we can't, population decline is a bad thing since elderly are not being taken care of.
Yeah, I mean that's I'd say one of the biggest things. I mean, of course, there's also the effects on the economy and other things of that nature, and that may not be very interesting to people in here, particularly. But everyone in here will be affected by a declined population when they're elderly.
But this debate's about abortion.
It is
not the economy and.
It is, but it's a ramification of abortion. You're right. And so I couldn't say abortion has nothing to do with bodily autonomy, it has to do with the child. Well, it does, because abortion does have something to do with the autonomy of a woman. You're absolutely right, and I don't think that's a wrong thing to say. But whether that matters more or not is another question.
I want to say like one of the oldest or one of the youngest records of an abortion happening was a woman that was, or a girl that was 10 years old. Do you think she should be forced to have a baby, or a 10-year-old should be forced to have a baby in order to keep population growth?
No, and again, I question the relevance of this scenario. If there was a law that
I think all abortions are relevant if you're trying to increase the population. Every single one of them. The little ones matter too. If population is your concern.
No, I'm more worried about sweeping legislation that would affect things like, so for example, if we made laws that would allow for these fringe scenarios to be exempted, to say, hey, you can get an abortion in these circumstances, I think the effect on the population would be negligible. Because even in the case of the 10-year-old, it's a very, I would speculate, not being a medical person, but I would speculate that the chance of that being a viable pregnancy is very slim, considering I don't think most 10-year-olds can get pregnant, and if they are, then I don't know. I imagine that could not go very well.
So you would allow exceptions since you don't think it's negligible. You don't think it's negligible.
No, I don't think these exemptions are. They go against my point. If anything, I think that
so you would allow exceptions. That's what I'm asking. So you would allow exceptions.
Personally, I would say it depends on the medical stuff going on. I'm not sure why people freak out when a child is literally brain dead and they're aborted. And we use these as a reason why everyone should be able to have abortion access
yes,
to
yes
anything.
or no?
But
yes or no?
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Yes or no?
No, I said yes.
Oh, you said sure, but okay. So what exceptions would you allow?
Well, just like what I said. These fringe scenarios where it could be like a 10-year-old child, maybe I don't have a problem with that. A case of like I said, the example of what's it, an ectopic pregnancy, that the child literally can't be born. So I don't understand why legislation prevents women from getting what we call abortions in that case. I think part of the problem is that we've called abortion something that describes too many things that really have nothing to do with. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think abortion is such a broad term in the medical world that it applies to just broadly speaking anything that involves the fetus being aborted, even if the fetus isn't going to be viable. And I think that's unfortunate.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you if these apply. Incest. Is that an exception that you would allow?
I'm not going to answer that because I don't find it relevant. I mean, I have no problem answering that in a personal way, but I don't think that's relevant to the debate.
You said you would allow exceptions. That's why I'm asking. So I'm asking. I'm trying to get to the point. What exceptions are you allowing?
Let's say for the sake of argument, sure. Let's say incest. Because I want to see where your argument's going. Rape, sure.
Molestation,
sure.
Abortions, in cases where there's like health concerns for the child and the mother,
sure.
or the mother. So, in cases where there's health concerns for the child as well, you said, right?
That depends. That's such a broad thing, but sure.
Sure. Okay.
You have like 2 minutes.
You said you have 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Thanks for the warning. So I just looked up the statistics on reasons for abortion. This is I don't know who this is, but the Lozier Institute. They say that 0.3% are rape and incest, 0.2 are life, major bodily function, 1.3 is fetal abnormality, and 2.5 is physical health. 95.7% is elected and unspecified reasons. So that's what I'm focused on. This less than 5%, I'm not too worried about.
So, wait. Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I don't think we have. Do we have time, Banner?
No, what you just said. You just said something. What did you say?
I mean, I can go back over the statistics.
Yeah.
I don't want to run out of time.
Okay.
Well,
what about a case where it's mentally ill other mothers?
Mentally ill?
Yes.
I'm assuming that goes into fetal abnormality or physical health. That's 1.3 and 0.5% respectively.
All right, 20 minutes is up.
Okay.
All right. So Xejeh's closing statement, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, my closing statement is I just want to bring up that the fact he does agree with exceptions to abortions. And I think these exceptions do play a role in population, as his argument was population decline. I think just like pennies add up to dollars, over time these exceptions are gonna make a big difference. And that's all I have.
Yeah. So Xejeh, as far as I could tell, didn't really prove, or we really just kind of got into the nuanced details of my position rather than him sort of proving his point from my perspective. I maintain that the fringe percentages of people who get abortions, he's right, they do add up, but they are relatively negligible compared to the 95% of people who get elective abortions for reasons other than what he listed off. And so that's what I'm focused on. And I think that these will have significant ramifications, as I had said. 95% of the millions and millions of children that are being unborn that are affecting the welfare of our senior citizens, as well as having other ramifications on our population decline. But that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, stunning job.